Destined to repeat the cycle, the lost man searches for an exit out of the subway. Welcome back to another movie review. Today we're going to talk about Exit 8, the latest video game horror movie adaptation. I will be starting off with a quick short review of the movie, my thoughts on it with no spoilers, and then we'll move into a spoiler section towards the last half of the video. I will make sure to put a little transition in there so you know when the spoiler section is going to hit. So if you want to ignore that, you can, or come back and watch it later. I'll make sure to put a bookmark there if you're interested in just spoiler insights. Exit 8 is directed by Ginki Kamarua, who previously directed 100 Flowers and Duality. I remember hearing about Duality, but I haven't seen that or 100 Flowers. And this is written by Katake Create, Kantoro Hasashi, Ginki Koromar, and starring Kazunori Ninamiya as the Lost Man, Yamato Kochi as the Walking Man, and then you have Naru Asanuma as the boy. And I should really learn how to pronounce these names when I watch these foreign films. Exit 8 follows the Lost Man. Don't remember if they gave him a name in the movie or not. I think they mentioned his name at some point. He's had some conversations on the phone. You follow the Lost Man. He's on the subway going to a temporary job. He gets a phone call. You know, there's something going on with an ex-girlfriend, and so he's trying to meet up with her. And when he gets off the train, he realizes that he seems like he's going in circles, and he comes to the realization that something is not quite right here. He ends up reading one of the signs on the wall that indicates, look for any anomalies. If you see an anomaly, turn back. And so this kind of freaks him out a little bit. He's not sure what to think about it. He kind of thinks it is a joke. And so he keeps walking. He noticed the sign number changes based on if he saw an anomaly or if he didn't see an anomaly. And he kind of realizes that, yeah, this is real. He's stuck in this place. And so the movie is basically follows him as he's trying to escape this endless tunnel of hallways that really only has about 4 turns. There's like a left, and a right. So it's it's an infinite loop, as Exit 8 indicates. It is more than just the Lost Man story. You do learn about some other characters in the movie. If you see the trailer, a female character, there's a boy, there's the Walking Man. And so you do learn a little bit about some of these characters throughout the film. I think the film was a good adaptation of a video game. I never did play Exit 8. I do kind of know what it's about. I've seen some video gameplay of it. And for turning a video game that doesn't have a really strong narrative into a pretty decent horror movie, I think they did a pretty good job at that. I don't know if it was really that scary. I didn't find it scary at all. I found it more interesting than anything along the lines of something like the Cube series from the late 90s, early 2000s, where you're kind of stuck in this place trying to get out. It's more of like a escape room scenario, if anything. But I don't think any of the movie contain a lot of frightening scenarios. Yeah, there's some unnerving things in a few scenes here and there. There's one scene where it kind of goes dark. It seems a lot more scary in the trailer. There's some stuff with some rats that's a little bit creepy. They kind of fall on some of these kind of typical tropes you see in some of these horror movies of recent years, where they use unsettling sounds to really get by. Well, I'm glad they at least didn't use any of the clicker sounding noises, which seems to be used a lot in horror movies over the last few years, especially since The Last of Us. It is kind of an unnerving sound, but they overuse it in everything, and it just kind of loses its horror luster, I guess, the more it's used. And so it's not in this movie, but they do use other sounds that are kind of typical of like found footage or these movies that heavily depend on auditorial methods to bring up the horror aspect of the film. I think the strongest point of this movie is just it does look great. There are a few questionable CG effects in it. Definitely look like they're hovering over something. There's a couple scenes in the movie that had some special effects that were a little bit odd looking that I didn't really care for. I think the actors did a really good job in the film. They unfortunately did give this protagonist the asthma, so works in the fact that he can't be running through these hallways and trying to get through as fast as possible because that can impact him and how his lungs are working. He does have an inhaler that he constantly puts in his bag for some reason, even though he's pulling it out every 5 minutes. So I'm not sure why he just didn't put it in his pocket or one of his coat pockets because he was wearing a pretty big coat. But overall, the performances here are pretty good. Story overall, it was all right. I didn't really sell me on the world or this kind of never-ending loop that they're stuck in. I don't think they did a lot with the anomalies. I'm not sure how the video game works with the anomalies, but here they were very minor. There were a couple bigger anomalies that occurred that I will talk about later in the spoiler section that kind of make me question some of the decisions these characters made. And then the beginning of the movie was a little rough because it starts out in this first person perspective for a little too long in my opinion. And I don't think it really worked. It kind of takes you out of the film a little bit just because it's, I don't know, it didn't work for me at all. So overall, I think it was a pretty good adaptation of a video game movie. Probably one of the better ones in recent years. And they added a decent narrative to it, basically following the lost man. And there's some stuff outside of being stuck in this infinite loop that is kind of impacting him in regards to what he wants to do in the future. So overall, it was a decent movie, a little slow, probably a little bit longer than it should have been. I think it could have been a tight under 90-minute film. It did drag a little bit, especially in the beginning. But if you enjoyed the game, you're probably definitely going to enjoy this movie. And if you just like kind of weird horror films that kind of make you think a little bit, you'll probably find something here to enjoy. So I'd give Exit 8 2 stars. As I mentioned earlier, they do start out in first-person mode, and I think the biggest part here is that the main character is on a subway. There's a lot of commentary on Japanese culture in regards to the working man or salaryman thing that's going on. A lot of self-isolation in that culture. So they do touch base on some of that stuff, especially within that first couple minutes where he's on the train, he has his headphones in, he's listening to music, he overhears this baby kind of crying, kind of breaking through the noise canceling of his headphones. He takes a headphone out. It's all in first person. I didn't really care for that too much. Turns his head, sees this child on a mother's lap crying, and then one of the other passengers getting annoyed and yelling at her, like, why can't you take care of your damn kid? And so he just puts his headphones in and goes about his day. He gets off the train. He's getting a phone call from his ex. He doesn't answer it initially. He eventually picks it up and finds out that she's at a hospital and that she's pregnant, even though they've been broken up. And so she's having a hard time deciding what to do with the child, whether she's going to abort or not. I assume that's what they're getting at in this movie. And he, from their conversation, sounds as though is not one to commit to anything or really have a strong instance of moving along in his life or really knowing what he wants to do. And once he hears that, his ex-girlfriend's pregnant, now he's like, okay, I'll meet you there. And so he ends up in the tunnel, though, loses signal as he's going and kind of realizes that he keeps passing the walking man a few times. Eventually, he tries to talk to this person. The walking man gives him a creepy look like they do in these horror movies. And then he ends up kind of running away, realizing that something's not quite right. He reads on a sign, look for any anomalies. If you see an anomaly, turn back. He starts following the signs and you can see the numbers going up and down depending on if he catches an anomaly or not. My biggest issue with this movie is the anomalies are pretty minor for the most part. There is one anomaly where there are some rats and they have some deformations. They basically mimic a person's face. It's all dark when it comes into the film. They do it in the trailer small where you see some rats happening, but they do show a little bit deeper in that one of the rats has a mouth. It's crying like a baby. There's a rat with an eye. There's a rat with an ear. And all this happens with the lost man after he's met up with the boy. And they're stumbling around in the dark. Before even any of this stuff happens, the lights are flickering. And at this point, you already know it's an anomaly. So I don't know why they're staying there and just not turning back. And so they fumble around in the dark. They finally run away. So that one, it wasn't really scary. It was just kind of there to have something for the audience to witness, even though it wasn't that intriguing in my opinion. And then later on towards the end, there's an anomaly where you hear tsunami sirens go off. and him and the boy are just standing there in the hallway like, what's going on? I'm pretty sure tsunamis are, I don't know if common, but they're about as common as hurricanes in Florida, maybe. Who knows? You don't fact check me on that. I'm probably wrong. So they're just standing there waiting for the water to come, I guess. And eventually the water comes around the corner, and instead of running, props the boy up on the exit 8 sign, and then he kind of washes away. You think maybe he's dead, but he eventually comes back and exits and kind of ends up back on the train at the scenario around the beginning of the movie where he's listening to headphones, sees a child crying on the mother's lap, and at this point he decides to actually intervene, and that's where the movie ends. So I assume that's how he breaks out of the loop. You could probably think that maybe he's still stuck in this loop. But overall, I don't think there was enough horror aspects in this movie to consider it a horror movie. It's more of a, I don't know, psychological thriller, if anything. And then the way they added additional characters, I think was really good, because you had the walking man. You actually have a transition in one scene where after the lost man meets up with the boy happens to point to the walking man, and then kind of transitions to the walking man's perspective, and you see how he's been trying to get out of this infinite loop and kind of how he became the walking man. Because at one point he's at, I don't remember what level he made it to. It wasn't a super high level. It was maybe 3 or 4, but he happens to come around the corner and see an exit going upstairs, even though it's not exit 8. And so there's assumption that he went up there and basically just got stuck in this hell. And so he became the walking man. But I did find it good that they have more than one character in the movie that they follow. You also follow the boy, and you don't really see how he got lost. He eventually starts talking, and that's one of the more annoying tropes in the movies. When you first meet the boy, he doesn't talk. He just kind of points and stands around. But eventually, once he warms up to the lost man, he ends up talking, and they're able to escape from there. There's also some scenes throughout that are anomalies where the lost man gets a phone call from his ex, who's still in the hospital, and then it turns out, no, that's just an anomaly. It's like, of course it's an anomaly. I don't know why you didn't walk the other way. But overall, I think the movie has some good parts and some bad parts. I think it's well shot. I think it's well acted, well directed. I just think the story's a little weak, and that some of the anomalies they chose to go for were not that exciting. It is a little longer than it probably should have been, but for a video adaptation, it was pretty good. So if it's up your alley, I recommend seeing it in the theater. It's probably better to see in the theater than at home, even though I only give it 2 stars. I think 2 stars is watchable. My scaling's a little weird. I should probably fine tune what I think it should be. Maybe give more 4 stars and 5 stars and more 3 stars. Kind of feel like I'm doing everything on a 4-star system. Anyways, if you like these reviews, make sure to hit that like, subscribe. I'll be back next time for more movie reviews.